Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to add some supplementary commentary to another interesting Brexit video published by the Financial Times, including on their YouTube channel, so it's viewable by people without a subscription. Essentially, the video broadly tackles three main themes, I would say. The first is the impact that Brexit has had on a range of businesses. Remember, this is the Financial Times. It focuses entirely on economic and business related issues. It's a shame that other outlets don't discuss the social aspects of Brexit with the same vigour. Second, what the spokespeople for various industries are hoping the government does to help them or take advantage of the benefits of Brexit if they were that way inclined. And third, lamenting the fact that there is simply no serious debate about Brexit going on in the country. But beyond that summary, I don't want to recover the content of the video. There's a link in the description for you to watch it yourself, and I'd encourage you to do so. But I do want to discuss some of the comments made in the video. Many of them are the sort of things I've been discussing in the past anyway. But first, so we focus on single market, customs union, EU membership. Someone in the video did indeed describe anything that we might do which falls short of these as being essentially tinkering around the edges. And to an extent, that is absolutely true. It's not possible to have a sort of tangent that gets us our major trade potential back without joining basically those three things. But the point is also made in the video that it's not just that the issue of anything stronger is politically risky in the UK right now, bordering on politically suicidal. It's that the EU isn't much interested in big leaps either. One of the people featured who'd worked with the Conservatives on both anti and pro-Brexit campaigns pointed out that there is zero desire amongst the public to discuss Brexit, which is why there is zero desire amongst politicians to do so. Obviously, in reality, it's not zero in either case. But it is the case that the importance of Brexit diminished very rapidly after we left. I had heard anecdotal evidence from Labour canvassers asking the public about it, reporting back that people just didn't see it as an election issue anymore. It's not something they're going to vote on. We've since seen this in polling. Yes, there is way more support for rejoining than remaining, or remaining out in this particular case, but that feeling isn't strong enough to put pressure on politicians to talk about it. So for now, the big questions of customs union, single market and membership are a faint whisper, but trade experts have been saying for some time there are still things we can do that make a difference. I'm increasingly focused on the Pan-European Mediterranean Convention. That being said, I would still like to think that a customs union will be politically possible in the foreseeable future. It's definitely the easiest to work on legally. So if the politics can be dealt with, that should be straightforward. A Norwegian-style VAT agreement was also mentioned in the video. There are things we can do. There are certainly things we can ask the EU to discuss, which they may or may not go for. But experts know that none of the big three are up for grabs in the short term. And this is reflected in the video. None of them are arguing for the government to do any of these things. The farmer talked about a veterinary agreement, as did the Chambers of Commerce, of the sort that Labour are proposing. The exporter of dinosaur models talked about closer alignment. This representative from the Chambers of Commerce mainly wanted politicians to just have a proper conversation about Brexit at least. Fat chance, I'm afraid. But because none of the options pro or anti-Brexit have strong or overwhelming support from the public, it works both ways. And again, this came out in the video and I would agree with this. On the one hand, politically mad for either of the major parties to want to engage with a topic which still divides key voters. But on the other hand, and I've said this plenty of times in the past, haven't I? It also gives Labour a lot of scope for doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes without upsetting voters because they're not that bothered. The Tories want to use the word Brexit a lot, but so they don't want to talk about it. They never talk about Brexit. They just use the word, oh, we're doing this thing because of Brexit. Everything's Brexit. Everything they want to do is Brexit. Labour, of course, don't want to talk about Brexit at all. As the video points out, why would Starmer tell a load of voters to go elsewhere for the sake of a policy he can't have? The EU are not interested in major changes to the trade agreement that they couldn't believe they wangled out of us. It wasn't just the Australians laughing at us. Every country which has agreed a post-Brexit trade agreement with us has got almost everything they wanted in terms of their starting position without having to concede very much in return. The furthest Labour could ever move on Brexit if they ignored electoral reality is to say we should rejoin something. Customs union, single market, both, and full membership. But that's it. Saying it won't make it happen. What I keep saying is what we need is for the public to say this. We don't need politicians to say it. We need the public to say it with a stronger voice. We need to convince the public, because the EU aren't going to entertain anything big if the Tories are on the sidelines saying, yeah, but we're just going to trash it all when we come back to power. That is not to say people barracking politicians about Brexit wasting their time. We need that to happen because we need politicians to talk about it. We need to have a national discussion. But if you want politicians to move, not just talk, you need the public to move first. Because there are two types of politician: those who are in tune with what their voters will vote for, and those who are not, who just like shooting their mouths off. The ones who are in tune are way more likely to win power. So you focus on them and you focus on their voters, because they go where the voters go. Of course, things like giving the vote to more young voters, as Labour are going to do, as well as more serious electoral reform, as we hope they will, can all change this political calculation. Like changing the attitudes of key voters, that is the way to drive political change. But if you change the system, you can change who those key voters are. So electoral reform should always be a huge focus by those who want an honest debate about Brexit, because you're more likely to get it. In the video, it wasn't just business owners bemoaning Brexit. There were also some featured who seemed to be Brexit supporters, but shall we say, they were certainly of the view that there is some benefit potential of Brexit which is not being exploited. Although one of them, Matthew Elliott, who ran one of the big Leave campaigns, not a suitable person to feature in the video if you ask me, he was not in the video representing any industry, but as a campaigner. So I thought, well, where's the Remain campaigner to balance him out? But anyway, he was one suggesting that we simply hadn't benefited from Brexit because we weren't trying, but he didn't say how we should. He rattled off some areas. Oh, we're really good in financial services, life sciences and a few other things. But the reality is Brexit didn't boost our capacity there. It did reduce it though. You take scientific research, for example. It's now harder to hire top academics from abroad. Partly because of our dysfunctional visa system, partly because we're being very funny about them bringing their family over, and partly because if they ever watch or read the news, they will be made to feel about as welcome in this country as a fart in a broken lift. He also talked about being far away from a trade deal with the US, but getting closer, and indeed being really close to a trade deal with California. Exhibit B for why he should not have been in the video, at least without a counterpoint. We're not close to a trade deal with California. California doesn't have trade deals. You can't get trade deals with any American state. Imagine Hertfordshire Council saying that they were going to agree a trade deal with the EU. The Brexiteers would go mad. You will waste your time. It's the government who deal with these things. Government arrange trade deals. In fact, they did go mad when the Scottish government were talking to others about trade. I mean, all they were doing is exactly what the Tories are doing when talking to American state legislatures. Yet the Brexiteers support one and oppose the other. Neither results in a trade deal. Someone also suggested that giving away sovereignty in order to reduce border friction was extraordinary. Nobody did this, least of all G7 countries. You think, you what, mate? France, Italy and Germany, all G7 countries, literally gave up their own currencies for the sake of easier trade. So this idea that G7 countries don't pragmatically give up control in one area in return for major benefits is not based in the real world. You always do. One comment, again, via the Chambers of Commerce, is that what businesses would really like to see is consistency. Now, this has been lacking at both ends. In the EU, rules are decided, they've always been decided, and then businesses have a certain amount of time to adapt to them, quite often several years if it's a big one, right? So you had your long-term planning in place. Now, the EU is still giving lots of businesses plenty of time to adapt to changing rules. You know, it's still easy to look up what are the changing rules in the EU. The problem is that British businesses don't know they don't know what they'll have to do. Because the government keeps trying to make its mind up, then it changes its mind, then it changes it again. So you can be literally days away from a new change and businesses don't know how or if it will affect them. Case in point, the recent tariffs being added to car exports to Canada. Another business owner described the deal with Australia. He said, I'm quite sure this deal with Australia is absolutely great for loads of businesses, But it's no good for his because the cost of sending something so far away exceeds the value of the product. And this is true to a lesser extent even with larger shipments. You don't have to be a small business. Like one of my hobbies is playing Warhammer games. The cost of the models these days is a little bit high. But you should see them in Australia. Games Workshop don't have production there. So they're shipped from the UK to Australia. And it's a very expensive hobby at the best of times, but down under, my goodness. And they're a large company. They can ship in large quantities, but it doesn't matter. And that is because of the huge cost of transporting goods. Even when you're shipping them in large quantities across to the other side of the world, trade deals don't help you with the cost of transport, which is why there aren't loads of businesses benefiting from our Australia trade deal. There will be some. You change trading arrangements and there will always be some beneficiaries, but it's not loads. And the same will apply to CPTPP membership as well. Huge cost of transporting anything. I mean, yes, you may as well have it for those who do benefit, but it does not compensate for the trade lost with our own doorstep market. And on the final point about not wanting to talk about the big issues in election year being bad for democracy, this point was made. Absolutely. Yes, it is. It's terrible for democracy that such a major issue is not being discussed, certainly not being discussed frankly. But of course, this is the fault of the media rather than politicians. It's not politicians who really decide what the public hear about policy. It's the media, because they are the gatekeepers. The government has a great deal more control than opposition parties. But even then, the media base... I mean, Keir Starmer can rock up to an interview wanting to talk about plans for the NHS, plans for schools, plans for housing. But if the question is about immigration, then that's what he's talking about. And if they ask him a few questions on the other topic areas, you know, just to stop him getting agitated, and he talks about his plans for them, but the media outlet chops them and only broadcasts the stuff on immigration, then that's all the public are going to know. And so it comes back to the original problem. We do need a serious debate about Brexit. By far and away the biggest policy decision the UK has made in modern history, possibly its entire history. We need that debate, but how to get it? The media mostly don't want it. Obviously, the Financial Times has been pretty good at discussing Brexit openly. Not so much the other outlets, like you may say, like, oh, The Guardian. But they have had very little reporting on it. Their coverage is mostly opinion pieces. You may go, oh, some of the papers in Scotland feel like that. And it made the point in the video that the SNP are the only major party discussing Brexit openly. But it's like, but they're not, are they? They're discussing Brexit. They're discussing Brexit in the context of what a Westminster government can do about it. But they're not discussing the impacts of Brexit for their own policy, for Scottish independence. They don't like talking about that, you notice. So no one's really talking about it, apart from the Financial Times, but very few people read that. And so it's left to the rest of us to have these conversations on a small scale, but all around the country. But watch the video, encourage others as well. It's frankly the only source of objective Brexit we're getting in the mainstream media. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.